you would, to make sure you remember to put your name in the chat box. So, again, I'll just remind you if I happen to overlook someone's name when I go through there and record that on the participation, just shoot me an email and let me know and we'll get it corrected. So, all right, so we're just coming off norm reference test. You guys got that submitted. I have pretty much all those scored and returned. I think I had one maybe I'm waiting on. I'd emailed the individual to take a look at it and before they resubmit. So you guys did a good job on that. We're going to kind of get into CBMs this evening. And then also I'm going to just kind of scratch the surface a little bit on um, just the mock IEP, talk just a little bit about it, and I'll go into more detail next week. So here we are. It's week 6. It's hard to believe. Seems like we just started. So we have 2 more weeks after this. And if you remember, just kind of looking ahead at the time frame, I'll remind you, you won't have anything due this Sunday. You kind of have that week off. And then the following week, you have CBM, which will be due on that Sunday. And then remember, guys, the mock IEP, it's a short turnaround, will be due that following Wednesday on or before 4. And we do that for that final because it takes me a while to go through the video. So just remember, that's why I want to kind of go ahead and talk a little bit tonight about that mock IEP and just kind of give you some ideas. So I'm going to do a screen share. I'm going to actually kind of backtrack a little bit. There was a slide deck, I think, back around week 3. In the second part of it, it talked about CBM. So I'm going to kind of backtrack tonight, hit those slide decks, some of the slides on that, talk about CBM, look at the rubric for the CBM report. There are 2 new sections in the assessment report that you will write up. I'm going to cover that tonight, talk just briefly about it. It's not anything major. And then, like I said, the last part of class before we end, I'll kind of go over the mock IEP. So I'm going to do a screen share quickly. Uh, Bear with me and I will get to where I need to be. Everyone's week is going well. As I was saying a while ago, school will be starting back. Someone mentioned after the 4th of July, it seems like it just goes by so quick, which is true. Guys will start getting emails from your school and your administration. I think it might have been Jennifer, someone there a while ago mentioned that they already started getting emails from their admin team. So, okay, this particular slide deck, as I mentioned, I'm backtracking a little bit here and going back to Chapter 6. You'll see it talks about curriculum-based assessment and other informal assessments. So it's going back actually to when we were talking about informal assessments. So I'm going to scroll down here to a couple of these slides, go over, and as we look at curriculum-based measurements. So you've probably heard the term curriculum-based assessment and also curriculum-based measurement. There is a little bit of a difference between the two. So the CBA or the assessment is using content from the curriculum to assess their progress, the students' progress within a given topic. And it's basically, and I think I mentioned this during informal assessments, CBAs or CBMs basically are considered an informal type of assessment. It's just one that we use a little bit more frequently to measure progress. And that's really more or less what the CBM or the curriculum-based measurement is. It's intended to measure or monitor student progress by comparing their progress with an expected rate of progress. It can be based upon a yearly goal that you've established, and it also allows you to basically provide ongoing monitoring of their progress and let you know if they're making adequate progress. And so I mentioned, I think last week in the Zoom, couple new terms for you to start thinking about, and it'll help you see the ups and downs of their progress as you monitor it, and you're going to get to experience that when you give the probes. So some of the terms, the 3 new terms that I mentioned last week was talking a little bit about establishing the baseline for the student. Where are they at? So maybe the first two to three probes that you give, taking those scores and dividing by three to come up with their base score, and that kind of gives you their baseline. And then as we administer the remainder of the probes, if you notice their scores going up and then all of a sudden they have a drop, that's kind of an indicator, hey, I need to stop, kind of see what's going on here. And that's where we would actually put in our second term, the intervention line on our chart and graph, showing that you noticed a drop in their score and I need to stop, evaluate it, and determine if I need to implement an intervention. Maybe go back and reteach the concept before I continue on giving my assessment probes. And then the third term that I mentioned last week was the aim line, which again, I'll show you an example of that here in just a little bit. So we have a baseline, an intervention line, and an aim line, and we're going to use those when we go and plot the scores. Okay. CBM is considered a little bit more of a formative type of evaluation versus the CBA. Okay. So it's a little bit more formal type of screening that we do. So effective CBMs. So when we look at it, we're wanting to make sure that the CBM, the probes that they measure, that the measures we select are sufficient when it comes to reliability and validity. So they can be used in confidence by you as the educational professional. We want to make sure that that the measures are easy to understand and they're easy to use so that you can employ those easily. They really don't take a lot of time. Very similar to an informal. If you remember, I mentioned you should be able to do an informal assessment in just a couple minutes and be able to determine if the students are understanding the concepts. The third thing we want to look at as far as determining whether it's effective or not is the results yielded by the measures. Are they easy to explain to others, such as parents or other school personnel, other members of the team? Which you will see based on the example I'll show you this evening as far as how to go in and plot those. It's very easy to kind of see their progress. You can kind of see the baseline if they had a drop when you put in the intervention line. If I was coming in and I had an understanding of it, I could tell what you did, Kim. You had to stop instruction, put in the intervention. I'm looking at the data plots on the graph, and I can easily see that. And then I can see where you continued administering the probes, and hopefully we see those data plots go in an upward trend versus a downward trend. So anybody you hope would be able to look at your visual representation and be able to tell kind of somewhat what was going on. These measures, when we do CBMs, they could be used frequently throughout the school year, and they don't have to be expensive. I gave you a resource last week, easycbm.com. You can find just about any type of probe that you need on that website. It's a great resource. It's free. It just takes just a little bit of your time to administer the probe and then track the data. Okay, but it gives you a very good indicator of how the student's doing and whether you need to go back and reteach a concept. Okay, so if you're wanting to go in and construct your own, you don't want to use a resource such as Easy CBM, talking about constructing CBMs for reading. You could do it on fluency. You have fluency probes, grade level passages. Okay, they may be instructional level for special education. Students read a passage orally for a minute while the teacher records errors. That could be one example. Okay, so the metrics on that would be the number of words read correctly per minute. Could look at the accuracy rate and then also compare that to a rubric. Comprehension, an example of that would be the maze. Oftentimes I mention a closed test, so students are given a passage that contains missing words. You can give them a paragraph and you have words within that paragraph that are missing. The student has to go in and basically determine the correct word from a couple to three choices that you give them that would fill that blank. So I call that referred to as the CLOZE test, close test. On here, it's referred to as a maze. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but you could do that based on their grade level. This chart is a good resource for you to go back and look at. So this is recommendations of weekly growth for reading in words. So you can see here you have grades 1 through 6. Primarily, you have grades 1 through 6 because after about grade 6, really, you don't have a traditional reading class. Most middle school, mid-level school settings don't have a formal reading class like we do in the lower grades. Okay, so that's why you see that chart stop at grade 6. So you can see realistic growth rates. So grade 1, 2 words per week. If special education, it's 0.83, general ed, 1.8. So if they're ambitious, 3 words. So this is kind of a chart just as a reference for you to look back on if you decide you want to do it in fluency to determine if the student's making progress. So if you determine, let's say, for example, we're looking at fluency using a CBM. We would want to determine our baseline, and that's one of the terms going back to what I just mentioned at the beginning of this Zoom and also last week. We need to determine their baseline. So you would have the student read 3 passages, then you come up with the median score as a baseline. So basically, you're reading the 3 passages, totaling their score divided by 3. That will give you their baseline. Okay. Looking at aim line, this is basically a goal that we are establishing, and then we're going to plot that aim line. So you could use your table back on the previous slide to determine what is a reasonable increase per week. Again, this is a table that I'm referencing. Okay. So you would multiply the growth by the number of weeks of instruction to follow. So this is if you're going to do it long term. Okay. Some teachers do it. For this class, due to it being an 8-week class, we're asking you to get a minimum of 4 data plots. Really would like to see you get 6, if at all possible, but we'd like to see you get at least a minimum of 4. Okay, but if you were using it long term, over a semester or even the course of the school year, so the example is you had a second grade student, their baseline is 55. Weekly increase, if you go back and look at the resource chart on the previous slide, is 1.5. You have 25 weeks of school left at the point in time that they're doing it in this example. So you take your 25 weeks times your weekly increase, that's 38. 38 plus the baseline of 55 equals 93. So we would want to make sure that our ending on our aim line was upward of 93. We would hope that that is the goal that they would achieve. So you'll see a little bit more on that when I show you the chart again here in a few minutes. Okay. If you determine progress, again, these are some examples here. Okay. So we're looking at fluency. So we plot data 1 or 2 times per week. Again, that's if this example, if you were using it long term. If the student falls below the aim line on 3 to 4 consecutive measures, we need to adjust instruction. For this class, if you see it drop after 2, you would want to put in your intervention line because this is a condensed version. Okay. If you were doing this in a regular school year, and you saw that aim line 3 to 4 consecutive measures, you would adjust instruction. Okay. Again, that's where you would indicate your intervention line. Okay. Do you need to implement some interventions, reteach, adjust your instructional methods, and then go back and continue? So the trend line provides our overall average performance. Okay, so it gives an example on here called the turkey method. And it's basically you divide your data points into thirds. Okay, maybe a little uh, tough to do since we're only asking you to get 6 in a short amount of time. But if you're doing it over the course of the year, you can go in and divide those data points into thirds. Find your median for the first and third groups and then plot and connect those points on the graph. Again, that's if you're doing it over a long period of time and you had several data points. Not really applicable for this course and the condensed version of the assignment we're doing. Okay. Actually, we were able to do this when this class was still a full semester before we switched over to the 8-week format because we would spend several weeks just on CBM. Okay. Progress, comprehension. These are some examples. Okay. Not saying you have to do fluency or you have to do comprehension, but again, these are just some examples. You would select your grade level or instructional level passage. Keep your first sentence intact and then delete every so many words. You might say, hey, I'm going to go in and delete every fourth word and leave a blank in its place. Okay. Or it could be every third or every fifth. Okay. It's up to you. And then supply three choices or three words for the blank, and only one should make sense. All right. And then you want to consider some of the following criteria if you consider doing this. They should not make contextual sense, should not rhyme with the correct choice. Want to make sure that they does not sound or look like the correct choice. Should not be nonsense words, should not require the student to read ahead to eliminate a choice, and they should not be challenging in terms of meaning. Okay. It's not some kind of trickery we're trying to throw in there, but we're wanting to see if the student can determine what is a correct word that needs to fill in that blank in order for that passage, everything to make sense. Here's one for spelling. You may be thinking, hey, I want to consider a spelling probe. So constructing measures for grade or instructional level words. Looking at 12 words for grades 1 through 3, 18 for grades 4 through 8. And then scoring, you would use correct letter sequences. So they would get 1 point for each two letters that are in correct sequence. And then you would give 1 point for correct beginning and ending letters. Here's an example. The word time. You have T, T-I, I-M, M-E, and E. So you have five correct sequences. We have the beginning and the end, and then these in the middle, as they provided an example. You would plot that number of correct letter sequences and the number of correctly spelled words. Okay. Here is a chart. Again, this is a reference if you decide to construct your own. In spelling, as far as realistic growth rates, so grade 2, realistic growth rate is 1. And if they're ambitious, it's 1.5, all the way up to grade 6. You can see 0.3 and 0.65. Math. Some of you guys might be math folks and you're wanting to construct your own. So we're going to determine our grade and instructional level. Computational problems, let's say there's 25 problems. Students are given 2 minutes to complete the problems. This activity reminds me of the old Mad Minute activity. I don't know if you guys have used those or heard of them or not, but used to do those a lot when I was still a classroom teacher in upper elementary grades. It's a warm-up activity in a review. We do Mad Minutes. So these are 2 minutes and there are 25 problems. So scoring digits correct per minute, not necessarily correct answer, correct digits. 1 point for each digit correct in the answer. So, for example, the problem is 54 plus 21. Student answered 75, so that's two digits correct. And then you plot the number of digits correct per minute. Okay? So you may have several digits that they get correct, but yet they could have an incorrect answer. Does that make sense? So one of the digits could be correct, but the overall answer is not. Okay, we're mainly looking for and counting the digits. Here is recommended weekly growth for math. Looking at digits correct per minute, you can see in grade 1, it's 0.3 if you're really ambitious. It's 0.5 all the way up to sixth grade realistic growth rate, 0.45, and if they're ambitious, it's 1. Okay, that's again, that's digits. Okay, looking a little bit at just curriculum-based measurement research. Okay, so CBMs have been found to noticeably affect academic achievement when the results are used to modify planning. Okay, basically, this is data-driven instruction. We can go and give these probes and score and then put the scores off to the side, but if we're not going to look at it, plot it, and determine if the students are progressing, then we're just doing it to give assessment. Okay, so we want to make sure that we use this, analyze the data, and determine if they are progressing. You don't want to just keep instructing and assuming that they're understanding when indeed they're not, and you just keep moving on as an instructor or a teacher, thinking everything is good, when in reality it's not, and that deficiency gap widens. Okay. So it's basically, it helps us as an instructor determine, is my instruction effective? Do I need to do something different? Do I need to modify? Do I need to change some things up to make sure that the students are understanding? So when research shows that teachers tend to set a little bit higher goals, the ones that do this on a routine basis, students are also receiving more feedback. Okay, if you are keeping a chart and you're plotting that data, it gives them a visual to look at. Okay, so students get more feedback. Teachers modify instructional techniques more often. It's very useful as a universal and pre-referral strategy. Okay, you're collecting a lot of data and plotting it, so it's great if you are suspecting a student with a learning disability. It predicts future performance on high-stakes tests. You remember me talking about high-stakes tests? That's basically your state-mandated testing, right? Valid assessment for determining eligibility for special education. Okay, so it gives you some good data to justify maybe, Kim, your recommendation on a student for testing. Okay, you can walk in with a lot of data and show the team. Teachers and students tend to like CBMs a little bit better because of the immediate feedback and they can see their progress, how they're doing. The data helps student acquisition of skills. It's valid for showing progress, especially with our bilingual students. Um, it may not allow for measurement of some important constructs. So you got to be really careful about the type of probe that you select compared to the curriculum and content that you're presenting. Okay. Okay. Just kind of shifting gears, I'm just going to mention this criterion reference assessment. It is a different type of assessment. Some state assessments or some states use criterion referenced versus standardized. So it's comparing the student to a given criterion. Okay, so it's comparing that student against themselves. It's not comparing them to an overall group. In Oklahoma, early on in my career, we went through several years where we got away from standardized test, and the state selected criterion reference test as our state test. So it wasn't really normed against a group, it was a student compared to or against themselves and how they measure up to a specific criteria. Okay. Again, they're not as widely used as they were. Again, we went through, especially after No Child Left Behind came out and they reauthorized that, and we started having a lot of high stakes testing. CRTs kind of went to the wayside. You don't see them used, states don't use them a lot as much anymore. Okay. This provides some good information as far as that student and how they measure up against specific criteria. But again, it's not measured to a large group or it's not normed against a large group of students. So, rest of the slides talk about developing that criterion reference test. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on there because we really don't get into those in detail and cover them in this course. So, I don't want to spend a lot of time on that. Any questions on CBM, just the information on these slides? Again, I backtracked back to chapter 6 slide deck. because it contained a lot on CBM. So again, for the purpose of this class and knowing it is a condensed 8-week class, I would again strongly encourage you to use this Easy CBM as a resource for this assignment because you can develop a probe, get you a probe quick, that you know is going to be reliable and valid. Um, or if you feel really ambitious, you can go and construct your own. So a lot of students in this course use the website for that. I'm going to switch over quickly and share kind of the syllabus or the rubric for this assignment. I want to show you, we will have two new parts that actually go into your assessment report. It's not anything that's big, long, and lengthy, but it is embedded into this report. So you will have your identifying information. So for this report, your identifying information and really your background are kind of combined into the one section. Okay, so that's a little bit of an adjustment. It's not new, but it's an adjustment. So you'll see they're just all condensed into the one section. You have your background information, just like in family information, but it all falls under the identifying information for this report. Okay. The first of two new sections that we're going to put into the report, the first one is probe and intervention section. Okay. And this is again in your syllabus, but I just want to cover it in the Zoom. So within this section, we're basically asking you to name and describe the probe that you've selected or that you are going to administer or that you did administer. Just give a brief discussion, rationale for the probe that you used, why you used it, why you felt like it was appropriate. Discuss the quantity and frequency of the probe use. Basically, this is how many times. So we're asking you to do a minimum of 4. Would really like to see you do 6 just to kind of get a better picture and a better idea, but we're looking for a minimum of 4. Okay. We're going to ask you to name and describe an intervention that you feel like is having to be used. Now, I will tell you based on your student, based on the probe, and based on their scores, they may not require an intervention. If you don't see a drop in your scores and you see a continuous upward rise in them, there's really no need to implement an intervention. If that is the case with your student, just in this probe and intervention section, if you did not have to implement an intervention, just briefly describe due to the nature of the student's scores, uh, in the probe administration, there was not a decline in scores, therefore, no intervention was necessary for the student. That's all you have to do. Okay. The next thing is discuss your rationale for the intervention. Again, if they don't need it, you're covering that in the statement that I just basically gave you the example of. You're just letting me know due to the nature of the student's scores and they continue to progress in a positive direction, there was no intervention needed or necessary at this time. Just basically state that. Explain any modification. So this would be if your student had a drop, you did an intervention, and you re-administer the probe and it continued to drop. What modification did you make to that intervention? That has happened with some of our case study students in previous semesters. So if you see that with your case study student, don't panic, don't freak out. That might happen. If you see that, especially the 2 drops where you implemented an intervention and then you went back and it started administering your probes again and you saw another drop, that's an obvious sign that the content that you're using is well above their ability level of where they are currently functioning. It's a big indicator you need to drop it down. It's over their head. Okay. Any questions on that? Again, your student may not need the intervention and just basically state it. Your student may need it, and your student scores may drop again after you implement that. Okay? So just be aware of that. That's the first section of two new ones. Okay? The next section you've already done two times previously, test results and interpretation. Basically, you're going to present the information, the data, in tables, charts, and graphs. We're going to ask you to put in a new chart or graph, and I'm going to show you an example of that in just a minute. Basically showing the data plots in your aim line, in your intervention line, okay? So again, we're doing the same thing. We're just going to do it this time with a new chart. We're asking you to show the data with a line graph, baseline, intervention line, okay, and an aim line. Those are your three new terms, right? The baseline, intervention line, if needed. If not, explain that. And the aim line, what you are projecting that they will score. Okay. Again, you highlight their strengths and weaknesses based off what you observed. Again, nothing new really in that section other than we're going to put in a new table. Okay. Next section, you've been doing already, recommendation and conclusion. You're going to just kind of highlight some instructional planning based on the results of the CBM, not the results of the norm reference, not the results of the informal, based off the data you collect from the CBM probe. Okay, give a little explanation of what you feel like instructional planning should be based off the data and the results you got. Okay, any instructional methods? Does the content need to be modified? Do you need to drop it back a grade level because you saw two drops in their data points, like I just mentioned a while ago? You did an intervention and then a modification and it still dropped. You may need to drop the material back a grade level. Okay. And then just kind of give a brief summary of their performance. Doesn't have to be anything long and lengthy, just like you guys have been doing in your previous assessment reports. The second new section is a reflection section. Here are the things we're asking you to put in this. We're asking you to explain three things that you learned about the CBM probe that you selected and that you administered. What's three things that you learned about that by administering that to your student? The next thing we're asking you to do, and there's no right or wrong on this, guys. This is just basically your personal um, feeling, your feedback based on your experience. There's no way you can mess this part up other than if you simply don't do it. Okay? We're asking you to discuss if you would use CBM assessments again and why. Support your stance. Tell me why you would or would not, with at least two pieces of information or data to support that. If you don't think you would use it again, just simply state it and tell me why. It's not going to upset me. This is based on your personal preference, based on your experience of doing this for this assignment. Okay, again, there's no right or wrong answer in this section. The last thing we're asking you to do in this reflection is outline or tell me or explain what you felt like are two strengths and two weaknesses of using CBMs based on your experience. What do you feel like are two strengths and what do you feel, excuse me, feel like would be two weaknesses? I'll give you an example. Strength may be One strength is that you're able to collect multiple pieces of data over the content that you're teaching by administering those probes. That can be a strength. A common weakness that I've seen or feedback I've gotten is some students felt like, hey, I'm already overwhelmed enough. I don't feel like I can add another thing on. I feel like this is too time consuming. It's your personal feeling. Okay. No right or wrong. Just a couple examples there. Okay. CBMs are like informals, guys. It's something that you can administer. It's short. It doesn't take a large chunk of your time. Okay. So it's very quick to administer. Okay. And then filling out the lesson plan template based on the information you're seeing from the CBM. Make sure you include your permission form, even if it's the same student. Okay. Just add the CBM probe that you're using on it, upload it. Okay. So remember, the two new sections are probe and intervention. And the second one is the reflection paragraph or section. Okay. Again, this reflection piece, guys, the only way you can mess it up is by not doing it. Okay. This is just your personal feeling based on your experience. Okay. Any questions on that? I want to show you one more thing real quick, if I could. And I'm going to get back into the course shell quickly. So bear with me. I'm going to show you an example of the, um, well, I'll just exit out of that. Uh-oh, having some difficulties here getting back over to where I need to get. Bear with me just a second here. I shifted you guys over to the wrong side. I couldn't see my tab. I want to share this report. This is in your course shell. It's under the sample reports, SPED 805. You guys mentioned one of you did. I think it was in section BD last week. The button had gotten turned off, so that I went in and corrected that. So basically, you couldn't see some of this. Sample reports right under the bell curve document. We'll click on that. I'm going to go down to example of CBM. I want to show you what this chart graph looks like. Again, if you want an example of what the report looks like with the two new sections, this is a good resource for you. Here you can see they put their raw data in a table just like many of you have created in the first two reports. The next thing is the new chart. This shows the three, again, this is an example taken from when this course was a full semester versus 8 week. Okay, so there's more data points on this. The first three, they gave their probes, kind of got their baseline, and then you can see after the second probe down to their third one, there was a drop. Here's their intervention line right here. So if I came in and said, Kim, can you show me some data on Johnny Joe where you've tracked it? You say, yeah, I want to share this with you, Dr. Posey. And I look at it and it's very easy for me to see. You start them off, there was a drop, you put in your intervention line, did some change your instruction, went back, covered some material. You start giving your data probes again. Shows the dates that you gave them here. August 28th, 29th, to 30th, they dropped. So you did an intervention and you didn't do anything until coming back from Labor Day weekend down here, September. Data point here. You can see the trend here. It's going upward, right? We go up, then we kind of flatten out here, and then we go up, continue. This is the aim line, the orange line, their aim score right here. This is what we're looking for. Okay. So that's an example right there showing your intervention, your base is over here, your baseline, and your aim line. These are all your data points, the blue. Okay. That example is in your 805 resources folder. Should have that fixed where everybody could see it now, regardless of what section you're in. Okay. One of the sections, the button was turned off. So I got that fixed so you can see it. Any questions on that? That gives you an idea of what we're talking about when we're saying data plots and going in and showing that and displaying it. Okay. I want to jump over to one more thing before we go, just to kind of get you to start thinking about it because, again, after this week, it's quick. We're right here. It's going to be on you. The CBMs do. Then you got to turn right around and have your mock IEP video. If, I will tell you this, if you go ahead and start and you submit that report to me before the due date, I will score it, get it back to you if you're wanting to try to get just a little bit ahead, knowing that is such a quick turnaround to make your mock IEP video, okay? So I'm going to pull up something in the syllabus. I mentioned to you kind of using this as a guide to direct you when you're doing your mock IEP. So I'm going to pull back the syllabus back up and I'm going to go to show you what I always pull up and recommend that they follow this when they're doing their video. Probably making you dizzy scrolling down through here as quick as I am, but bear with me just a second here. Okay, so this is on starting on page 28 of the course syllabus. It gets into talking about the mock IEP. And I mentioned early on when I talked about some of these assignments, usually they average 12 to 15 minutes. We said create a 10 to 15-minute video. Okay. Um, Here in this video on the video section of the rubric, I always say if you take this section right here and just follow it when you're doing your IEP video, you're going to be fine. So some people lay it down in front of them where they can kind of see it and follow it. So you're just basically going to do an introduction to the meeting. I know the team's not there, you know it, but it's just trying to get you in the habit. So you're going to introduce them. So Kim's doing this. She's like, hey, I want to welcome you to Johnny's meeting today. First, I want to do some introductions. Our building level principal, the school psych, the school nurse, the whoever your team is. Just make sure you recognize them, even though they're not there. Kind of stating the purpose of the meeting. This is where you would say, Jennifer, really the purpose of our meeting today is I've been doing some different assessments to collect data to show academic performance at Johnny Joe. I'd like to share it with you to make so we can make an informed decision on whether to proceed with testing. Okay. And at this time, I'm going to go here and go over some of the results with you. You would state the assessments. We did some informal, we did some CBM, norm reference, and talk a little bit about their present level of performance. And then you're going to go through and explain how they performed on each one of the assessments you did, the informal, the CBM, and the norm reference. This is where you want to make sure, if you look here, present evidence. This is what I talked about, I believe, last week, just kind of giving you an idea, or the week before. Presenting your tables, charts, and graphs. If you don't feel confident doing the screen share on your recording, you don't feel good with technology and confident doing that, you can literally As you're explaining, hold up your table charts and graphs and point to those if that is more comfortable for you. I've had a lot of them that create a slide deck and they upload those tables, charts, and graphs on there and do a screen share just like I'm doing right now. And they use that as their guide when they're going through there and explaining their results for their IEP meeting. That's permissible, okay, if you choose to do that. So making sure that you show those tables, charts, and graphs to explain your data. Also in the IEP or this meeting, this mock meeting, we would like for you to identify what you feel like are three of the students' strengths and what you feel like are three of the students' weaknesses based on the assessments that you gave. Okay. You could pick out a strength from each of the three, two from one from another. It's totally up to you. Just as long as you identify three strengths and three weaknesses. We're going to ask you to basically to outline two short-term SMART goals. Always tell the class for short term, think in terms of 9 weeks, what you would like to see the student accomplish in 9 weeks. The next thing we're going to ask you to do is outline two long-term SMART goals. Long-term would be what you would like to see that student accomplish from the time of that meeting to the next annual meeting, which would be a year. Okay. Long-term, a year from the time you're doing the meeting. Short-term, a 9 week period. What I always tell the class. Okay. And as you are coming to the end of your meeting, getting ready to conclude it, just briefly discuss how you or what your expectations are for the parents or the guardians to help support you in accomplishing those goals for Johnny. What are some things that the parent or guardian could do at home to support the goals, the SMART goals that you've established for Johnny to accomplish over 9 weeks, and again, goals that you established for a year down the road? Could be something as simple as mom and dad or the guardian sitting down 5 times a week for 15 minutes to read with them. It could be something that simple. Okay. And then conclude it. Basically, just thank them for their time and coming in. You look forward to working with them and also seeing, um, whether Johnny can accomplish those goals based on um, the things that we're going to implement for him moving forward. Okay. Now, a lot of this you've already done. You've already done these assessments. You've already got the stuff already up to this point. You could actually go ahead and start building those slide decks if that's how you choose to do it. It's totally up to you. You don't have to. Okay. If it helps you, that's fine. The main thing that I'm looking at here, because I already know what you've done, I've already scored your work on the assessments, right? I've already seen your charts and graphs and all that. The main thing I'm looking for on this final assignment is really your delivery in your presentation of the material. You've already done the work. You've got the data. It's just looking for your confidence, the flow of the meeting. From an administrator standpoint, I always tell classes, look, there's nothing worse than walking into an IEP meeting and the teacher's not prepared. They're scrambling around. They're tripping over their own information, trying to explain. You can tell they're basically shooting from the hip on it and they haven't prepared for it. And the comment I always make is imagine how those parents feel sitting on the other side of the table if they see you, the one that's in charge or overseeing their child's goals. Imagine how they feel. Do you think they're going to have a lot of confidence in you if you present yourself in that manner? So we want you to be prepared when you go into those meetings. So I'm looking for presentation skills, just the flow of the meeting, um, and having confidence in presenting it. I mean, you've already got it. You've already done the work. You're just going to present it. That's all you're doing. Okay. Also, do it in a manner that you feel like's easy for the parent to understand. When I come in, present. the comprehensive reports, that's what I always try to do. That's my goal. Imagine if I was the parent sitting on the other side of the table. I need to make sure that I'm explaining this in a manner that they can understand. And that really helps when you start showing those tables, the visual representation. It helps them understand what you're trying to explain when they see it in a visual representation. Also, you want to make sure within the flow of that meeting that you just encourage any questions or input. You might pause for a second and say, "Hey, does anybody have any questions? Any team member have a question up to this point before I continue?" Even though this is a mock meeting, just to kind of get you in the habit of doing that. Okay. And then again, looking for just being able to present it in a confident manner. Okay. You've already done all the legwork on this. You're just presenting your data that you have and trying to make that meeting flow. Okay. Again, we want you to do this, be organized when you go in. Again, you don't want your building principal coming in and you're not prepared. Everybody's going to be able to see it, especially the parent. And you want that parent to trust you. You want them to have confidence in you, right? You're going to be working directly with them. It's that relationship you build with them. And if they don't trust you, it can be a long haul. Okay, it's about developing that relationship and that trust is what it comes down to, right? Is there any question on that material? I know I kind of talked about the CBMs. I backtracked to that slide deck, and then here I'm already going into talking to you about the final a little bit. But if you need to, print this section off and maybe lay it down in front of you to kind of glance down just to make sure you're kind of on track if that's what you need to do.
Dr. Posey,
Yeah,
I have a question, kind of the nuts and bolts of the of doing the mock IEP.
yeah,
Um, so we need to be on camera, like you see our face,
yeah.
or can we make a slide deck thing where we're talking through it and
You
we're
can talk through it, but I want to be able to see. So you want to minimize your screen just like I'm doing now and have your slide deck up.
okay, got you. So we
Yeah,
we need to be not just our voice, but our
yeah,
okay, okay.
yeah. So again, it's just like you're doing a Zoom, like you're going to do a Zoom meeting. And I always say Zoom because that's what we use for this class. I feel like probably most of you are most comfortable with that. We've had to use it, and it was a common tool since COVID. I've had other ones use Google Meet to record it, so you may be more comfortable with that. I just use Zoom in a generic manner for that. But it's just like going on your Zoom account, like you're going to do a Zoom meeting and you do a screen share and you have your slide deck pulled up and you hit the record button and move forward. Okay. Couple of things to think about, and I'll go in this more detail next week, but just kind of think about. So, common issue that we have on the mock IEP when students try to go and upload it in a Blackboard. Okay. I'm just throwing this out there and I'll cover this again next week. We have found that if your browser is not Google Chrome, you're using Internet Explorer or Firefox, we tend to see students have technical difficulties with that. And what I mean by technical difficulty is they go to upload it in Blackboard and then you see that little wheel just sit there and spin. And you never know whether it completely uploads. Okay. We don't see that very, it's very seldom that we see it if your browser is Chrome. Another thing I will throw out there when you're doing these videos, the file tends to be pretty large. Okay. Don't know your knowledge and comfort of using YouTube. What I always do with these videos every Wednesday is I download it on my computer, then I go to my YouTube and I upload it, and it condenses or compresses the file, and it will create a YouTube link. And I just copy the link and drop it over in the Blackboard, and that's what I send you every week for the recording. It's literally about 3 to 4 clicks of the mouse to do. And I can walk you through that next week. Take the last 5 minutes of class and do a screen share and show you how to walk through and do it. Some of you may be already knowledgeable with creating YouTube videos. Again, it's literally 3 to 4 clicks of a mouse. It's that easy, and it condenses the size of that video file down. You don't have to do that, but it's a good little tool to have in your toolbox for later on down the road if you've never done it before. It's pretty easy. So, but I'll take some time next week at the end of class and show you how to do that. Okay. And you can write down some notes, steps to do it. All right. Any questions before we go on the material I covered? Guys, get you a probe. Go ahead and get started on it. Remember, we want to see at least a minimum of 4. We'd really like to see you do 6. Don't don't wait. Don't procrastinate thinking, oh man, I don't have anything to do this Sunday. I'm just going to take some time off because it's going to happen quick. And finals will be here. Okay, you don't have anything this Sunday, but the following Sunday you do. Then we turn around and on Wednesday at 4, you got to have your video in. So if you get a little time and you decide, hey, I want to create the slides to help guide me on that, you've already got your information for your informal and your norm reference. You could go ahead and start putting that together and be ahead. Okay. I will monitor Blackboard closely, that especially that last weekend as they're starting to come in, especially that Sunday, so I can get them scored and back to you so you'll have that information to finalize your and do your video since it's a short turnaround. If you feel good about where you're at and you've already got a head start and you get that submitted early, I'll score it and get it back to you just so you can get ahead of the game. Okay? Any questions before we go?
This is Carla. I do have a quick question.
Okay?
Can we use CBMs we've used like during the school year,
You
or do
can.
we? Okay. And then what if we did our uh, norm reference on the sample that you gave us, and it's
Yeah.
not our same kid?
Yeah.
How do we
So
put that in?
you're going to, when you do your mock IEP video, you're going to act like it's your case study student if you use my video. I'm the only one that knows that you use my video.
Okay.
Okay. So when you go on, if you use my video, but you used another student on the other two, just act like when you're presenting, that student did all 3 of them.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank
Again,
you.
Carla, I'm the only one that's going to know you use the video.
Okay.
So just act like it's your case study student.
All right. Thank you.
Okay? Make it easy.
Do we need to upload the CB M probes that we use? Like if we use Easy CBM, do you want us to upload those as part of the report?
No, you don't have to upload those. No, the only ones that you were required to upload was copies of the informal because so many of the informals are teacher made. So those are the ones that we've asked you to upload as part of your report submission. But on the CBMs, I don't need to see it. You'll talk about um, that in your report. Okay. Any other questions? Again, we'll have another Zoom meeting before these are due. So I'll cover them again briefly, quickly, and then I will also go back in and spend some time on the mock IEP video and answer any questions you have there and go over that briefly. And then I will take a few minutes and walk you through how to upload that into YouTube and condense that file for those of you that are interested and want to do it. Okay. Any other questions before we go?
What if we're unable to get a student to do 4 tests in the middle of July?
You're unable to get a student to do 4 of them. Do you have a case study student right now?
Yeah, the same one I've been doing all the papers on. It's just getting more and more difficult to get with them.
Okay. Are they in close proximity or are they a distance off?
No, I mean they're here in town, but summer school's over. I was able to kind of lean on that until they finish summer school, but I'll figure it out. I think I'm the only one that's not liking that we do so much of this during our summer, but I'll figure it out.
Yeah, and that's one of the things about the summer. That's why I created the testing lab video. And again, that's why the first night, when I started class, I was like, hey, one of the main things, especially for this summer course, is you need to make sure you have access to a student. Um, and sometimes in the summer, it is tough to do it. Initially, we didn't offer this in the summer, and then we started offering it up in the summer. And that's when I made that testing video for the norm reference because so many people didn't have access to the school psych or the psychometrist. So, if Jared, if you see you're going to get in a bind on that, you're having difficulty, shoot me an email, let me know. Okay, and we'll figure something out. All right.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? No,
And
everyone
just a
good?
suggestion on that one thing, what I did with mine, because I'm not driving 20 minutes, 4 to 6 times the next couple weeks. So I printed off the passages and it's my friend. So obviously that's a little easier, but I gave the passages to her and said not to give it to the kid. And then we just FaceTimed or you could Zoom
Yeah.
and she just did her 1 minute read with me that way. That way I
Yeah.
didn't have to drive each time to see her.
Yep. That's one way I've had some that set it up like it. Shauna, thanks for mentioning that did it on Zoom. They set it up like that with the parent and just had them and they FaceTimed or Zoomed with them and then did their fluency is what the probe that they had. So, okay. All right, guys. If you have any questions between now and next Wednesday, please email me. And again, Jared, if you see you're going to get in a bind on that, please reach out to me early so we can figure something out, okay? All right. Thank you guys. Have a good rest of your week.